The EU has just won the Nobel Peace Prize. It is seen by some as a force for the good. And I'd be interested in what your vision and view of the European Union is. Do you go into it like a member of UKIP, dedicated to undermine it? Or do you go into it with a positive view, that it is a force for good, and it can make a difference in the world, and it is a forum that you feel prepared and able to work with in order to bring about change, not just within Europe, but within the world as a whole?
I was last time,
Yes,
so
So that meant you were first time.
I was first time.
all right, so it's me. Okay. sorry, I got the wrong name. Is it me now or not?
I mean,
You're just okay, I understand to that. I do appreciate that the Green Party is Eurosceptic. I know this and I appreciate it, and I can see the reasons. I think the European Union can do great good. I has been a great promoter of human rights. It has. We see we've not had any European war really. It has promoted a lot of things we stand for. I do fear, though, that the regulations and the power divide within the Union is not right, and it needs addressing. So I would want to look into that, and I'm not very happy about the Germans and the French having so much power and really deciding what other countries have to do. Because I generally like that poorer countries and richer countries can work together and support each other. That is something I always thought the European Union stands for, and I like this. But yes, it isn't perfect. It needs to be looked at. Yeah, thank you.
I think you're right. I think that that UKIP in particular and a large chunk of the Tory party will try and turn it into a referendum on whether we should be in or out of Europe, just like they do every single time. And there was the referendum party from, well, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that, who campaigned solely on that and just didn't have any policies at all. I think there's a lot wrong with the EU, as has been said. I mean, it has got sort of built-in neoliberal agendas and a lot of it. The elected members of the Parliament don't have the powers that they should have. There is too much power vested in the Council of Europe, who then try and blame the Commission for everything. So it's dysfunctional. But as a mate of mine always said about the lottery, you've got to be in it to win it. And rather that we were in there making the case not only for green politics, but for reform of the system that is there to make it work in a more open and democratic way. Than outside shouting about it. Because if we were outside Europe as a country, it'd be pointless anyway, because we'd have incredible problems with trading with the EU. I don't think they'd just let you have a nice big trading bloc. I think we have to be in there making the case for green politics and for the reform of the institutions.
Well, obviously there's a lot wrong with a lot of the so-called democracy in our country and also in Europe. And I was a member of this party when it was, the actual policy was to withdraw from Europe. But then it changed back in '89 when we realised that actually it might be quite a good thing. And that was when we got a very good vote. I think that if we do need to change it so that the elected people, the European Parliament has more power. And if that was the case, we could change what the EU is now, which is, I'm afraid, a grouping that gives power to multinational companies and lets them ride roughshod over everyone and make sure they get all the advantages and works for the rich. And we need to change it to become a sustainable and ecologically based and equitable Europe, and we could be a great influence on the rest of the world then, and be a different influence from the American influence, and we could be show them how it is, reform the common agricultural policy and the fisheries policy and all the rest, and show them how it's done.
Obviously, a lot of the opposition to the EU in this country is of a nationalistic and even xenophobic character. Whereas me as a socialist, I am by default an internationalist. So I believe that organisations on the scale of the EU, bigger than the nation state, are absolutely necessary to tackle most of the issues that we have today, such as climate change and so on. But the EU as it stands is, it is a capitalist, neoliberal institution, despite what the right-wing press will tell you. It has some reforms, like the social chapter and environmental protection, but it is at heart a capitalist institution. And it has a severe lack of democracy, and it is very bureaucratic. So I believe we need to counter the nationalistic opposition to the EU with demands for real democratic reform, so that the Parliament has more power, so that so that it is not automatically, it's not constitutionally a neoliberal so-called free market institution. But I believe that on the whole, the EU or something like it does need to exist.
Okay, I don't know which American comedian it was, but somebody said when Henry Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize, it was the day that satire died. And I think there's an article in The Guardian this morning which says that the people of Greece must be thinking pretty much like that now, because they are subject to an economic war from the rulers of Europe. So, I think that we need to say that. But I also think the Green Party, I think, has a policy that basically decisions should be made at the most appropriate level. Decisions about climate change, decisions about macroeconomic policy, decisions about the way the world is organised need to be made internationally, probably at a world level and certainly at a European level. On the other hand, decisions about how best to spend and allocate a bit of money should be made locally and very locally, rather than at the moment, for instance, where, as I understand it, essential services in this country are being propped up by handouts from the European Social Fund. And you have to write a bid. And it's somebody in Brussels giving the money out to somebody in a city, London, who's trying to hold a public service together. That's insane. So there's a lot that needs sorting out. I'm in favour of the European community. It needs to be reformed. I'm in favour of a people's Europe. And basically that's the way forward. And I stand, the people in Greece are my brothers and sisters. The rulers in Britain are not.